Welcome, early birds. We'll get started at the top of the hour. Thank you for joining us for Migrating from Legacy Systems to Sage Intacct. And as I said, we'll begin in just a few moments. All right, we are at the top of the hour. And as I mentioned earlier, today we're talking about migrating from legacy systems to cloud-based native cloud, Sage Intacct. And this is from a construction company's perspective. What are the benefits for a construction company who's looking to move from a system that perhaps they've been using for many decades to modern technology? So let's do a little bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions, we urge you, we would love to answer them as best we can. So take a look at the little toolbar and find the Q&A function for any questions that you might have during the course of the presentation. Don't be shy, we'd be happy to answer those. So we are offering 1 CPE credit for today's presentation. And to be eligible for that CPE credit, because we are online and in a webinar format, we will be asking poll questions, and all poll questions need to be answered. We submit that to NASBA. So please pay attention when the poll questions come up. And then following the webinar, you will receive 1 or 2 emails from us. The first will come from me, and it will include a copy of the slides from today's presentation, the recording of today's presentation, a link to a survey, and I ask that you allow up to 48 hours to receive that follow-up email. And the second email does not come from me. It comes from one of our sister companies on the accounting side. They do the CPE processing for us. And if you are eligible, you will receive an email that contains your CPE certificate. And they ask that you allow up to 2 weeks to receive that. If you don't get your certificate in 2 weeks, please contact me. My email, dawn.westerberg@lbmc.com, is there on the slide. In the years I've been here, I've only had to chase it down twice. So things run very well and very efficiently. So, but if it does happen, you know where to find me. So I'm very pleased. Today we are going to be joined by Misty Palick, who will be our presenter. She is the practice lead for LBMC Technology Solutions Sage Intacct Construction and Real Estate Practice. And Misty has been with LBMC Technologies since July of 2024. She came to LBMC with a Bachelor of Arts from Simpson College, a Bachelor of Computer Science from SNHU, and a minor in Agile Project Management. She is certified in Sage Intacct implementation, Sage Intacct accounting, Sage Intacct construction expert, Barry Ryan sales process, Sage field operations, construction management, Sage Intacct construction payroll, and Sage Intacct projects and inventory. Prior to joining LBMC, Misty worked for Aprio, UHY, Palick Consulting, and Prairie Engineering. And she's an active member in the user group, otherwise known as TUG for CRE. So, Misty, I'm turning this over to you. The floor is all yours.
Wow, what an introduction. I hope I can live up to that, Dawn. I'm happy to be here today, and thank you for the warm introduction. These are today's learning objectives. So we have understand the key benefits of Sage Intacct construction over a legacy system, and we're going to talk a lot about that today. Identify the unique challenges of migrating legacy systems in construction. Explore the migration process to Sage Intacct construction. Learn the best practices for a smooth transition in construction firms. I know that seems like an oxymoron, but we'll get through it. and understand how Sage Intacct Construction integrates with existing tools. So let's get started with some history. I think this is important to cover. So first, to understand the future of construction technology, I think it's essential to look at its history. So Timberline, now Sage 300 CRE, has been around since 1979. You heard me right, 1979, last century. Founded by John Gorman in Oregon, and it's become the leading construction and real estate ERP system. Sage acquired them in 2003 and has made minimal changes. So that's important to remember. Master Builder, created by Dan Smith, was designed out of necessity to improve business operations in his construction business. Intuit bought them in 2001. Intuit, not Sage, I said Intuit. And Sage acquired it in 2006. So Sage enhanced its back end to compete with QuickBooks Online and facilitate future cloud-based capabilities. So then you've got QuickBooks for Contractors. It's been around since the late 80s and has helped millions of small businesses with accounting. Great products, right? So then there's Intacct. Sage actually bought Intacct in 2017, so realize that it is not a new product. It's been around since 1999. And when Sage bought them, they began the development of their construction module. To share more about that, Sage took what was already in existence, Sage Intacct's project costing and billing module, and added things like change management, project contracts, retainage to this already powerful and existing module. So each new release of Sage Intacct is new features, not bug fixes, because the product has been stable and well built in the cloud, first line of code back in 1999. So I want you to take a good look at this timeline. So we're talking all the way from 1979 till today, and that is 46 years that we've gotten out of these amazing products. That's impressive. The reason we're sharing this today is because these programs are well known in the construction industry, and they have something in common. It's called product lifecycle. So if you haven't noticed, the world around us is changing rapidly, and all things, unfortunately, do come to an end eventually. So there is a point to why we're sharing this content. Look at this cycle chart for just a minute, and if you'll notice that most software's lifespan is 6 to 8 years, not 68 years, but 6 to 8 years. That's it. Now consider the prior slide that I shared with you that told us that Timberline has been around for 46 years. When most softwares only last 6 to 8 years, we can start to see the writing on the wall with these legacy products. Sage hasn't and probably won't provide a specific date when they might stop supporting these fantastic programs like Sage 300 CRE or Sage 100 Contractor, but it's likely that these programs will eventually be phased out, and many people are already transitioning to cloud computing, especially in other industries. Construction is a late adopter with new technology. QuickBooks, on the other hand, has announced in 2023 that they no longer support any of their desktop versions, and they've already converted many companies to QuickBooks Online, which is also a great program for small companies. There's nothing wrong with QuickBooks Online, and I would never say that. I think it's a great product, and it's helped thousands and thousands of small companies get on their feet. Only 10 years ago is really when things started to transpire with construction and project management software development. So no one really knows what kicked it off in specific, but I can tell you that the pandemic definitely pushed it over the finish line, and that much faster. So I realized that some of this messaging might seem like I've heard this before, this seems familiar. And the reason is because it's still relevant, right? We are faced with the pandemic still happening, and the after effects of that is affecting everybody still to this day. So let's talk about through some of the advancements of why these changes are occurring. So the first real push in cloud technology came just some 10 years ago, like I mentioned. And although several products have been in the cloud for a very long time, one of the biggest reasons we see an influx of people moving to the cloud is because their legacy software won't integrate with the future of construction technology products. Like, if you haven't heard about it before, a project management software called Procore, very popular product. And the way our industry is building and evolving into future of technology, we need to think and act faster than we ever have before. You can see here that just in 1999, which really doesn't seem like it could be 26 years ago, we were in our first evolutionary phase as a construction industry called the analog phase. This is where drawings were still done on blueprint paper using ammonia to seal it. And I hope that all of you who've been in this industry as long as I have can smell the ammonia as I read that sentence. And even back then, there were platforms coming out that really pushed us to the cloud, like AutoCAD, 3D modeling programs, all sorts of, operational softwares. Those platforms, though, even in their infancy, used to communicate with the ERP systems of that age. So again, now we're at a place where the new programs who are true cloud-based do not communicate well with those legacy on-prem solutions. And this brought us to the second era, where the internet and mobile has taken over for better insights and faster decision making. That happened from 1999 to 2018. And I was alive during this great time, so it's so fascinating to see how much we've transformed in the past, 26 years even. And we are now in the midst of the third era of construction technology, which we like to call the Enlightened Age. And in this era, we have every tool at our fingertips, often without needing to step on site. Most of our technology, from drawings and estimatings, even modeling and ERP systems, is cloud-based. We demand comprehensive data to make informed decisions and strive to be proactive rather than reactive. So let's take a look at the evolution of a construction financial manager. The second major reason for the transition to true cloud technology is our continuous evolution and increasing sophistication. This chart illustrates the progression of construction financial managers. Initially, they were historians, merely people who would record events without considering any improvements. Next came the analysts, who began to understand that analyzing history could help predict future trends, very important. And now we have the visionary, the new breed of construction financial managers. Now, there's nothing wrong if you're still in the analog phase or you're still a visionary or a historian. There's nothing wrong with any of these phases or construction evolution that I've told you about today. But this is where society lives now, right? We have the visionary, they are sophisticated, they want comprehensive data so that, again, they can be proactive rather than reactive to something that's happening within their organization. We're definitely not going backwards. And so when we meet with a visionary CFM, it's crucial to, tailor our presentation to their pressing needs and meet them where they are, right? We want to meet that visionary where they are, not trying to work backwards and move the bus forward, okay? So I know that, again, this message might seem familiar, but we are still dealing with COVID in my neck of the woods. COVID is rampant right now. And so seeing a picture of COVID virus really reminds me that there's beauty in everything. I think it actually looks like a flower on this screen. And while COVID has caused us a lot of pain, it really accelerated the adoption of construction technology. It enabled remote work, which was challenging before because all of our paper-based processes. Most construction companies often still issue paper checks to their employees and vendors. So COVID forced us to be agile and reevaluate our operations. To survive in our fragile climate, we had to learn how to pivot. And interestingly enough, Gartner research reports that 85% of organizations across all industries will have a cloud-first strategy by 2025. Guess what? That's this year, guys. So that's pretty impressive that 85% of organizations will have a cloud-first strategy. That's pretty awesome. And that is included of all industries, not just construction. But construction is definitely on the top of everybody's mind when it comes to this. So let's take our first poll question, Dawn, if you don't mind.
Not at all. So let me launch that. Here it is. This is a multiple choice question, and it's, what is your biggest concern about migrating from your current legacy system? And the choices are loss of critical job cost or project data, disruption to ongoing construction projects, difficulty training staff on new technology, high cost of migration, or other.
Yeah, this is I'll be real interested to see how this one comes out. To see what everybody is, what scares you the most.
Exactly. All right, I'm going to end the poll. Oops, wait, I'll give it another second. I saw a few more come in. So, Misty, here's what we have. The number one concern was difficulty training staff on new technology. And then tied for second behind that was disruption to ongoing construction projects and the high cost of migration.
Good to know. Yeah, and I definitely am going to talk through, that piece of difficulty training staff and new technology, because adoption is vital to the success of any implementation. So we're going to talk through that. First, let's talk about some of the key differences between some of the legacy Sage products and QuickBooks Online, for example. So, I'm sure all of you here can read today, so I'm not here to read you slides, but let's start by comparing Sage Intacct Construction, Sage 300 CRE Timberline, Sage 100 Contractor Master Builder, and QuickBooks Online. So we might be a bit biased because we are a Sage Intacct reseller, but you've heard me praise these timeless classics like Sage 300 CRE and Sage 100 Contractor. But seriously, I want you to look at this and say, can your current system do everything that Sage Intacct can? I think it's pretty impressive. So all these systems handle day-to-day accounting. That's their function. That's why they were built, and that's pretty straightforward because accounting is always accounting, right? Some do it better than others, but they all do basic accounting. Expense and budget tracking are also standard features across the board. Where things get interesting is with the interactive custom reporting. So what does that mean? It means that you can build custom reports right inside your database. So there are a lot of external reporting tools that you can use. One that we might all be familiar with is Excel. But I want you to think, if you could do it in your current software and not have to export it to Excel or use a third-party application that might be costly for you, would you want it? And I think that is an important topic to discuss. So, QuickBooks Online is pretty limited in this area, and that's why it does have some red X's underneath it, because it's limited in your custom reporting writing capabilities. You would have to have a third party to really get some good custom reports. And they also don't have construction specific reports. They're getting there and they're making advancements all the time. But it is important to note that things like in custom report writing isn't always the best in QBO compared to some of the even legacy products. So you can see that across the board. And then with QBO, it's important to note that while you can buy the packages, they have different packages, from basic to self-employed to advanced. You can't necessarily add or remove modules based on your needs. So you get all the modules with any plan, but you might just end up paying for ones that you don't actually use. So they count that subscription fee based on your functionality instead of the modules that you're going to use. Which is nothing wrong with that. It's just a different way of pricing their software. So but you have the power of choice with a product like Sage Intacct or Sage 300 or Sage 100 Contractor. You get to choose what modules you want and how you're going to use them. They all come with the core basic accounting modules, but we're talking about extra things like service or construction or fixed assets, inventory. You get to choose what modules you want and will use and pay for ultimately. So all Sage legacy products offer enterprise level security, allowing you to control user rights and experiences through security roles. QBO has some of this, but it is not the same level of detail. Like I can't lock down a specific area in QBO. It's more, well, I can, but I can't get really detailed or granular. Do you want to have access to accounts receivable and accounts payable? Great. And do you want them to have access to payroll? No. So it's a little bit limited and you can't change those roles. The roles are set in place, where in any legacy Sage product, you do have the full capability of setting up those roles yourself and deciding who gets to see what, when, where, and how. The star of the show with Sage Intacct is multi-entity accounting. And we're so confident that you'll love this feature that we're hosting a webinar on it in April called Intercompany Accounting. And it's a big challenge for many companies, and Sage Intacct handles it beautifully. I'm going to demonstrate that a little bit here in a little while. We're going to take you into the product and let you see it firsthand. So both QBO and Sage Intacct are cloud-based, and they can integrate with many other cloud platforms. And this is, again, is why many people are moving to the cloud, especially if they're using operational software like Procore that won't integrate with their legacy ERP systems. So we have seen an influx of that for sure. There aren't all the legacy construction products here, because guess what? There's probably, I don't know, 15 or 20 of those out there. You know, there's Foundation, there's Computer Ease, there's many on-prem legacy systems. There's very few in the cloud, though, that actually can perform like a product like Intacct could. There's also Acumatica out there. It is a contender to Intacct. It works differently, though. I will share with you that. So now let's talk about why Sage Intacct specifically stands out. So why would you choose Sage Intacct Construction over another product? So across all industries, and this isn't just for Sage Intacct Construction customers, but it is for all Sage Intacct customers, they experience a 250% ROI. That's impressive, right? With a cloud product, you can be up and running faster because there's less software setup time. We're just configuring the system. We're not building the system for you. So 6 months payback. We mean it. True cloud capabilities automate many tasks, freeing you up to focus on more important things. Enjoy a 79% reduction in close time and a 65% improvement in productivity. Lastly, if you're not familiar with the AI CPA, they wrote the book on accounting and are the intimate authority on accounting as well. They use and recommend Sage Intacct over any other product, which speaks volumes about its strength in accounting. So I will mention this now, and you'll probably hear me say this again. Sage Intacct is heavy accounting software. It has wonderful audit trails. It follows GAAP principles. It is heavy accounting software. I would not say the same about about QBO, just so you know. And as we've shown in previous slides, Sage has been a key player in the construction industry for quite some time. Did you know that over 50,000 construction customers use some version of Sage? And if you didn't know it, there are actually over 30 flavors of Sage, not just including the ones we've discussed today. So 48% of these customers are leading in their industry, and 53% of them are very large contracting firms. So about half are, big clients, but think about the other half. The other half are smaller clients. They might be specialty subcontractors who are just getting started in the industry. So Sage Intacct, one of the beauties of it as well is that it can fit any need that you might have. Sometimes in the beginning, it might be too robust for a company. So they'll start out in QuickBooks Online, and guess what? They grow and they expand and they buy new companies, and they have to merge things together. And guess what? They're outgrown QuickBooks. So then they come to us and say, okay, we need the next step. And so Sage Intacct is the next step for that. It can fill in a lot of those gaps that they've been struggling with of multi-entity management, custom report writing, and even, security measures. So Sage has also been ranked as the #1 provider of accounting and estimating solutions year after year. And clearly it's a trusted partner in the construction industry because, they bought 2 of the biggest construction products out there and made them better. And, they also bought Sage Intacct and developed it for construction. So let's talk about the pillars of Sage Intacct Construction. Here you can see the 4 pillars of Sage Intacct Construction product suite. So we call it a product suite because there are some areas where we have different products that we plug in. So they're not just modules, they're actual products that we connect to Sage. They're in the Sage family though. So construction financials is Sage Intacct Construction. That is your financial backbone to your organization. But then we have construction operations. So that's the Sage Field Operations, Sage Construction Management, Sage Real Estate. So those are bolt-on modules that can go in and sync 100% with Sage Intacct Construction. And so the data flows both ways, sometimes in both ways, sometimes it's just one direction. but depending on your configuration settings. And then we have construction and HR payroll going around the circle here. So we have Sage Intacct construction payroll, which is if you want to do your own payroll, you certainly can. And then we have ADP construction payroll there. And in the next slide, you're going to see a whole bunch of partners also. So there's alternatives, but these are the people that are in the Sage construction family, we'll call it. So this is the construction product suite provided by Sage. And then we do have pre-construction. So we have Sage Estimating, Sage Bid Matrix, and e-Takeoff Dimension. So if you're having, pre-construction you need that function for your company to operate. So you need estimating. Bid Matrix is actually for general contractors who want to have bid room management. And then e-Takeoff is true e-Takeoff software where you can, do a takeoff and provide materials lists and budgets and things like that for the estimating, and which ultimately ends up in Intacct as well as the project budget. So this is the construction product suite provided by Sage, and this is how we often pitch the construction product suite. So when companies ask me, can Sage Intacct be the answer for us for everything? Not likely. I will say that there is no silver bullet, unfortunately, and I really believe in Sage's methodology of knowing that they were really, really, really good at one thing, and it was accounting, and then they've fostered and built these other products to fill in the gaps where accounting wasn't just all that a company needed, right? So these are, kind of products that Sage has purchased, very, very cream of the crop products. So they're, they've been around a long, long time, and Sage partnered with them to build a full integration so that the complete picture could be completed. Okay, so let's take it a step further. Now it's the same family, but you'll notice that we have all sorts of other, companies that are not Sage. And so you get the power of choice and flexibility. Because of Sage Intacct's open architecture, it can play nicely with a lot of other products. And what the really nice thing is if you're already using one of these products, it's likely that when you go to Intacct, it's just a different interface or a different integration. It's not that you have to change all of your softwares at once. That's often a pain point that I see with a lot of companies is they, might come and say, well, we use Procore, but our Sage legacy doesn't communicate with it. So we want to move to the cloud, but we don't want to change Procore. We want to keep Procore, and that's perfectly acceptable, right? So we have an integration. They're still developing some of these things as well, but I want you to know that Intacct considers these to be integration partners. And what that means is they go through a really stringent process to be listed on the Sage Intacct marketplace. They have to, have a developer's license, and they have to go through a really stringent process to be considered a company that Sage would recommend to their clients. So this is the cream of the crop of many of the construction, partners that we are with now, but there are hundreds more. So this is just a small sampling of the most popular ones out there right now. So you might see a company you're familiar with on this list. The important thing to remember is that Sage Intacct is cloud-based, and it does integrate with many products already. And that's usually where we come in, because they are always, clients are coming and saying, my old software doesn't work with my new software. So we got to find a way to move to the cloud so that they can all talk to each other, right? Okay, so we're actually ready for our next poll question, Dawn.
Okay. So here's the second poll question. How long have you been using your current legacy system for construction management? And so the categories are less than a year, 5 to 10 years, or over 10 years.
Good question, right? Nope, that's wrong window.
All right, give it a few more moments here to make sure that everybody has enough time to answer.
Someone says 46 years, so over 10 years, and they have 46 years. I want to know about it. I actually see that a lot. Like, I just talked to a prospective client today, and they were considering Intacct, and it was kind of funny because they've been on Sage 100 contractor for, I think he said 38 years. And this young gentleman actually took over the business from his father. And he was like, well, it's a great dinosaur and it works really, really well, but I don't want to use it. I want to go to the cloud and I want to use the cloud. But 38 years they've been on the same product. So it's been around a long time. It does a good job.
Well, Misty, we have, compared to that story, we have a pretty youthful group with us today. Half the group is less than 5 years, and half the group is 5 to 10 years.
Okay, that's fair enough. So we're in that 6 to 8 range, right? When I said that, products expire, and we are seeing that more and more, as time goes on, we're seeing a lot of generational shifts, right? So, some of the older generation is retiring and leaving their legacy to their children or relatives, or new management comes in and they come in and they go, oh, this is an on-prem solution, and it feels cumbersome to them because they're used to cloud technology, right? The younger generation was, I think, born with a phone in their hand. They want that technology at their fingertips, ready to use it at any time. So let's talk through some unique challenges that we are all faced when considering moving softwares. So even if it's not to a cloud software, just in general, that construction companies face when considering migrating. So as an industry whole, we are faced with some really unique challenges that I don't feel other industries that I've been involved with really have to face to get across that bridge of migration, right? So let's break down each one of these challenges. We have dimensionalized data, ongoing projects and jobs. That was one of our poll questions. Translation of knowledge, also very important. Historical data transfer, and then learning and adoption. And guess what? It's not an upgrade. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that question of, oh, this is just an upgrade to my existing Sage. It is not. It is a new implementation. It's an entirely different product, but it's going to get you to the cloud. You'll be much happier there. Okay. So let's talk for a minute about the differences of linear thinking versus dimensional thinking. And as we transgress through these slides, you're going to get the whole picture. But I love this demonstration of, you'll notice on the left, in a typical accounting system, all the general ledger accounts are in the same bucket. So typically you have a base number, and then they're segmented out with like base account number dash department number dash location number. So that's a very common linear thinking way. And that's how most legacy products are developed. Intacct does something a little bit different, which is, I'm going to show you today the power of dimensional accounting. But if you think dimensionally, the base account and those dimensions, the department, location, class, project, all of those are in separate buckets underneath the base account. So these are sub-ledgers to the general ledger account, which really allows us to segregate our data in a cleaner way. We only have to dump out one bucket if we want to see department. We don't have to dump out all our buckets at once and try to hold back some of the information. So it's a really great visual representation of what we're faced with when we're thinking linear versus dimensional. So let's take a look at this in a little bit different way to try to understand it better. So this is linear-based structure in traditional accounting. So you're going to have your primary account. It might be something like 6450 travel expense. Awesome. That's fantastic, right? That's your base chart of accounts. Totally typical. Everybody's got those. And I like to call them buckets. That's why I had that graphic made up, is because these are your buckets that you can put your money in and out of. And then you can see we have account segments. So typically we'll have locations or projects or maybe department. And then this is what your chart of accounts ends up looking like. And all of these might roll up to 6450. So when you run a financial statement, you'll see it maybe all rolled up into 6450. But what if you want to know just by department, a profit and loss statement, or just by office location, or just by project? That's very difficult in linear thinking or linear traditional accounting. So there could be at least 75 different account code combinations when you're thinking about these segmented chart of accounts. And typically what we see in these traditional accounting platforms, excuse me, is that you're going to have maybe, oh, sorry, let me get a drink. I have had a cold, sorry. We'll blip that out of the recording. Okay. Excuse me. Just a second.
We'll give Misty a moment, but um, it's interesting how unwieldy chart of accounts can become in the linear based structure. We've worked with customers who had literally thousands of lines in their spreadsheet of their chart of accounts. And so Misty is right when she talks about how moving to a dynamic dimensional accounting model is so revolutionary. And it, it may sound strange if you're used to the linear way of thinking, but once you kind of wrap your arms around dimensional accounting, you're going to love it. It allows you to do so much more, and it simplifies an over complex system. So, Misty, you're back. I was just tap dancing for a little while there.
Oh, I really appreciate that. I have had a cold, so I apologize for that. So hopefully that won't happen again. But to John's point, yes, dimensional accounting really takes you a step further because you can really segregate it out and get really good reporting. So let's look at how Sage Intacct does it. Remember those separate buckets? They were all separated out. So we have dimensions over here, which are subledgers to the general ledger. We can see customer, vendor, employee, entity, and location. They kind of fall together. We can see department, class, item, and project. We even have in construction cost code and cost type. So we even have more, and we can have user defined dimensions as well. So if the typical buckets don't fit your needs, you can add a dimension, that suits your needs. You can also relabel some of these. Like if class is kind of a free floater, so you could use class in a myriad of ways as far as that goes. But the advantage of this is that on the balance sheet and the profit and loss statement, you'll see the base account only. But because you can run a balance sheet or a profit and loss statement, I don't know that you'd want to do it on a balance sheet per se, but on a profit and loss statement, you definitely want to have a P&L based on all of these dimensions or each one of these dimensions, right? So you can have groups of dimensions as well. Excuse me, guys. So project type is also a subdimension of projects. So you can run financials based on a project type, like hotels or schools, or segmenting out those types of work that you do or lines of business that you have even further. So you're able to segregate those because of these separate buckets underneath your general ledger. If that makes sense? Hopefully. We don't have any questions or anything yet, do we, Don?
We do not have any questions in the Q&A, but that's a good reminder. If you do, please drop your question in the Q&A.
Excellent. Okay, voice, come on. We can do this. We got a lot to talk about today. So let's talk through, historical data for a minute. And this is usually a touchy subject for a lot of people. So it's kind of like exciting and interesting that I'm talking about this. But historical data is a really common frustration. Oh, geez, I apologize. Just a second, guys. I really am going to get through this, I swear. Okay. Sorry, I've been fine just all day, and then I started talking, so I guess that's it. I've also been talking all day, so that doesn't help. But okay, so this can be a really common frustration in consulting because many clients think that migrating to a new system is just an upgrade from their old one. Remember I mentioned that? And I have 2 points to share about this. First, if change was easy, everyone would be doing it. Am I right? I mean, that is really important, but change is never easy. And second, if you're moving to a cloud-based ERP from an outdated legacy system, there's a good reason for it. Maybe the product is being phased out. Maybe it doesn't integrate with your current software, or new management doesn't understand the legacy system. So saying this is the way we've always done it isn't really helpful. I'll just be honest there. And it's important to set realistic expectations when migrating from your old system to something new. Change is never easy, but if you set realistic expectations, like acknowledging that things will be different and they will never be the same again, it also helps in getting adoption. So your reports might look different than the ones you've been using for a very long time. That is a very typical thing. It'll have all the information on there, but it's just going to look different, okay? You'll need to adjust your expectations because this is a completely different software. And just because it functions differently doesn't mean it's wrong. It has its perks too. So it's just that change is uncomfortable. And yes, change is hard. We all are faced with that. Even us consultants, we are all faced with that for sure. So when considering historical data, think about the previous slides that I showed. They were segregated into the general ledgers, which means typically for many systems, they have all that data in one bucket. They might have it segmented out, but remember, it was all in one bucket. So when you're transferring this data to Sage Intacct, you have a few choices. One option is to bring over just trial balances and not worry about the details. Most companies will buy a read-only user for their legacy software and keep the details there. Looking back is healthy, but transferring all that data and dimensionalizing it for Sage Intacct can be time-consuming and very costly. Another option is to use a migration partner. So their role is to take your data and dimensionalize it for you. It's definitely not cheap, but it's totally effective if that's what you choose. You would need to compare the cost of a legacy read-only user to the one-time fee of a migration partner who translates your data into Sage Intacct. A third option is for you to dimensionalize your general ledger yourself. So which can be very time consuming and often not worth the effort. So you can see the screen here. We're talking about, this is the master data that comes over to Sage Intacct. And then this is the general ledger data that comes over to Sage Intacct. And this lower picture here, this is actually an import template that we use. So this brings me to my next point. We can import almost anything into Sage Intacct because of its open architecture. And during our implementation process, we'll ask you for your import templates. So we're going to work with you and you will fill out these templates. We use an Excel file, looks much like this lower picture here, to import all your master records, all your general ledger detail, but you are filling it out. We are not responsible for filling out your templates for you. So you don't get to just give us the data and go, there you go, I gave it to you. You actually have to put it in the template because we can't be responsible for your data, right? That's your data, will always be your data. So I just like to clarify that, for sure. We can import anything that you send to us. And there might be a few tweaks that we make that, oh, you've got the line number wrong and we need to correct that. We can make changes like that, but we will never mess with the integrity of your data. That is your data, came from you, will always be your data. So I just like to stress that. So ultimately you control what goes into your Sage Intacct instance, but remember to consider the time and the effort that it takes to segregate out your data. So you're taking it from that one bucket and you're splitting it up 10 different ways into these other buckets. So, and you'll notice that I didn't mention projects or jobs as part of the master data set. And that's because those might change from the start of the implementation to when you actually go live in Intacct. So think about this as those projects that are maybe they started last year and your go live date is June 1st in Sage Intacct. And those projects are only halfway done. They're going to go till next summer. So you have to do something with that history for those projects. And that brings me to my next slide. It's called project bleed down. And this is a very common term when we're talking about, those jobs that are ongoing. But I want you to know this process is incredibly complex. So if you haven't heard this term before, you're in for a real treat. It refers to how your ongoing jobs, which are started but not finished, get transferred to a new system. This needs to happen no matter what system you choose. Doesn't matter if it's Intacct, doesn't matter if it's QBO, doesn't matter if it's a legacy product or a different product entirely. This has to happen for those jobs that are ongoing. It can be a very challenging process and it involves multiple steps, but it's totally doable and with time and diligence. So first you need to determine which projects we're going to be in both legacy and the new ERP. There are several ways to bring over this historical data for these projects so that the remainder of the project can be managed in the new system. And this ensures is what this ensures is that everything is where it needs to be for contract billings, commitment billings, and job costs. Because if you were to, bring over your project contract billings, then they might be already started. They might be 50% complete. And so you have to bring over that progress billing to bring the contract amount and the billing amount up to date. So this is an arduous process, but it's totally doable, and it's just necessary. It's kind of a necessary evil for us. But this is typically on you, maybe even a week or two before your planned go live date, you would give us the projects that are going to be in both systems, and we would help you through this process. So this isn't something that has to be done at the time of go live, but it has to be done shortly thereafter, because guess what? You're going to want to do your new contract billings out of the new system, right? So if you were going to Sage Intacct, you want those contract billings to come out of the new system. Otherwise, what was the point of transitioning, right? So it is important to understand this project bleed down process. It's arduous, but it is totally worth it, so that way you can run job specific reports like a P&L statement on a project, and you can the most important thing about it is that your jobs are up to date, those jobs that are ongoing. So that is incredibly important for future reporting, right? Because you're not done with the job, you still have stuff to do. And let's talk about probably the most important thing of how to get buy-in from your employees to ensure the implementation is a success. And this was one of the poll questions too, of learning and adoption. So I did a little research on this, and I was going to share it with you. So according to Everett Rogers' Diffusion of Innovations, there are 5 types of adopters for new technology. And we're sharing this just so you can analyze your team and figure out who falls into which category. Identifying these key people helps you know where to focus your efforts. Each company should evaluate the people involved in the project as they start looking at migrating to an ERP system. And not everybody will be quick to adopt and help others in the company embrace new technology. Because remember what I said, change is hard, right? So everyone has a role. Even in a small company where they wear many hats, it's important to identify early on what kind of learner each person is, so you can anticipate where there might be delays or opportunities to make the migration smoother. Everybody wants a smooth transition, right? Like nobody wants to, just say, well, there's no magic bullet. We can't push a magic button that says, ta-da, you're there. So it is hard, and it is a laborsome process, but it's really important to identify, even if it's one person, what kind of learner or adopter are you, specifically. If you're going to be the main project manager from your side that we are working with, maybe you should identify, in one of these categories so that you can relay that information to us, so we know who we are dealing with. And that is incredibly important, because the most effective way to achieve early adoption is through early involvement. So if everyone has a say in the migration and is involved from the very beginning, they're more likely to embrace it as their own, right? So this is a proven fact. And so even if you don't have 5 people from your team, know that there's work to be done on every level before we can actually start an implementation. Wow, we just
Uh,
scrolled through that. Yeah.
Misty, could you go back? Yes. So the question is the red line, the bell curve, seems to associate with the percentages that you have in the types, so 2.5, 13.5, etc. What does the black line represent?
It's like the market share. So it's the average of, people that participated, I think, in this bell curve numbers, if that makes sense. So
Okay.
it's the market share percentage. Yeah, across the thing. No, good question, actually. So if your company only has one person on the team, it's crucial to recognize that you'll be wearing many hats, and in this case, early involvement and thorough preparation is even more important. So make sure you set realistic expectations again for yourself and plan extra time to manage the transition smoothly. there are always partners out there. So if we have identified that your company has one person and they're really going to struggle with getting you to the cloud on your side, right? They have a full-time job as well. So we understand that there are partners that we can mitigate with and say, okay, this partner is actually going to help you through that getting your data out of your database, and like even one of those migration partners. So know that you're not alone in this battle for sure. And we want the best and the smoothest transition for you as well. But one of the ways that you can help us is identifying these types of learners or adopters in your company and even in yourself to relay that information to us so that we know where there might be some risks and we can mitigate those risks. Okay. And then I'm actually going to skip this one because I know we are kind of coming up on time too. So I don't want to, I wanted to pop into Sage real quick. So if we could ask this poll question.
Yeah, I'll get that launched.
Thank you.
So, what is the primary driver for considering a migration to Sage Intacct construction? And you can choose more than one answer here. We've got need for better project and financial reporting, inability of current system to handle multiple jobs or scalability, compliance with construction specified regulations, and reducing inefficiencies and improving cost management, and not sure. So let me give this a couple of moments. Then again, you can choose more than one.
Yeah, this is a good question too.
It is. And I don't think it's going to surprise you at all, Misty. The number one driver is the need for better project and financial reporting.
Makes sense for sure. Okay, awesome. Okay, so here's where I'm going to share a little bit of a story. So I went back and I looked at, is project management the same for you as it is for us? Because we take project management incredibly serious here at LBMC, and we have excellent project management, and we do take care of our clients with those project managers. So as I was preparing for this webinar, I wanted to compare the similarities between your world and our world in consulting. So yours involves actual building of something, while mine involves consulting to ensure your implementation or migration goes as smoothly as possible. And we have a lot in common. So we both follow a tried and true methodology for implementing Sage Intacct. Just like in your industry, we start with planning and design, and then we build the foundation and configure the system based on our design. So like you, we do testing and training to ensure everything is solid. And finally, we hand the keys over to you, much like you open the doors to whatever you built. So post-construction support is similar to punch lists, where we would ensure everything is running smoothly and transition you to ongoing support. So we have a methodology as well. One of the things I'm really, oh gosh, sorry, my scrolling keeps going crazy today. So one of the things that is really important to understand is picking the right partner mitigates risk. And so this is actually where I'm going to include my story. So a few years ago, an inland hurricane came through my hometown, which is unheard of. I live in the Midwest, totally unheard of. It was totally random. And everyone needed a new roof because the high winds destroyed all of our community's roofs. And at the time, it was really hard to find a roofing company because there was so much work to be done. And we chose a company that did a decent job. The roof is just fine, I'll have you know, and that was 5 years ago now. But they, soon after they put our roof on, they went out of business. And so we chose a company that went out of business right away, which voided our 30-year warranty, because any future work that we need done on our roof, guess what? We have to call a new company that we don't know. And they'll have to charge us for any work that they do on our roof. So the point here is that you really want to choose a partner who's going to be around for the long haul. We have many years of expertise, and especially in implementing Sage Intacct. We follow a tried and true methodology, but more importantly, we've been in business for 40 years. So you can trust that we're going to be here when it's time to replace the roof of your business. Now, I've been through many implementations in my time, and I've often said this and relayed this to other people, but it's almost more important that you choose the right partner instead of just the software, because the software is going to do what it's designed to do. But it's the partner who helps you get there. It's the partner that holds your hand across that data migration bridge, the testing, the design bridge. We hold your hand across that so that you can get to the other side. We fill that gap for you. So it is incredibly important to choose the right partner that's going to not only help you mitigate risk, but who is tried and true and is going to be there for the long haul. Very, very important. I'm going to mention one more thing before I hopefully get a minute in Sage Intacct, just to show you a couple dashboards. But I've done a lot of implementations over my time. In Sage 100 Contractor, I've probably done about 40 implementations over the past 10 years. And then I've done lots of QuickBooks implementations and in Sage Intacct. And so recently, I've done a full implementation of a client who was going from Sage 100 Contractor. They went to Sage Intacct Construction, ADP, and Procore all at the same time. Now, that's never my recommendation, that you just rip off the Band-Aid and jump ship and start doing things in 3 different products at once, because that was very hard and difficult. But I'll have you know that it did take us about 6 months to get them implemented, but they are a huge success now. That all 3 products are working seamlessly together. We know exactly who is doing what in which program. And, and that was partly due to our detailed, recording of their SOPs and helping them through that business process of how they're going to operate in the new systems. It was about providing a bridge, but a documented bridge that took them from one system that worked perfectly fine for them, but that one system did all 3 things. And now they have to have 3 systems to replace that one thing because it was not cloud-based and they wanted to move to the future. So it was very challenging to get them across the bridge, but documentation and early adoption was our key to success there. So us getting the right people involved at the right time was imperative to their success, and they are fully operational and very happy with all 3 products. So just thought I'd share that too. And then we're going to pop in here for just a second. We are going to run out of time today. But so this is Sage Intacct, and I have 2 environments I'm going to show you just real quick. And we're going to go kind of fast because time is of the essence. And so you'll notice I'm using Google Chrome as my browser of choice. Intacct is browser agnostic, so you can use any browser that you choose. I'm logged in as Emma, the controller, and she has the security clearance to be able to see things that maybe somebody else wouldn't. Like we're looking at a role-based dashboard for a CFO. Not everybody would have access to that. And you'll notice things right off the bat as I start to hover. I can drill down on these things because of my security clearance. Dashboards are unlimited and Intacct. You can have as many as you'd like. You can make these global, so they can be for the entire organization or just you. Obviously, again, not everybody would have access to a role-based CFO dashboard. But I'm going to show you real quickly the power of dimensions. So we're actually going to drill down on this admin cost here, and you'll notice it was $2,060.80, right? So if I went a step further and I went down to the general journal, which is this is just a general journal entry. You'll notice here's my base account, here's my location, my department, my channel, my project. If I drop that down, I've got customer, vendor, employee, item, and these are all your separate buckets. So at the time of transaction, you're going to categorize these to the different buckets at every line in the system. So don't let that be overwhelming, because there are dimensional relationships that you can set up to automate those things, of course. So we're going to choose a dimensional filter and say we just want to see USA as a location. So you're going to see all my numbers change on this dashboard, and it takes about 10 seconds. It's pretty quick. I am fortunate to have fiber optics in my neighborhood, but even in situations that I haven't had fiber optics, it's been just fine. So here's the power of dimensional accounting. Guess what? I'm going to click on that same admin, and now it is only showing me $1,300. And so when I drill down to that actual transaction, there's a lot less transactions here. And these are only the ones that are actually put to location 100 for USA. So this 110 actually is a location under that entity. And that's why it's showing up back on this admin report. So you can see how you can slice and dice those buckets, dump one bucket out at a time. It's really fluid that way. And then of course you can reset the filters. I'm going to pop over to the construction environment real quick and just show you a project dashboard because I think it's important to talk about that. Those dimensions live everywhere in Intacct. It is the basis of its structure. So you can see here, you can group things by hotels, for example, if you wanted to look at this project performance on just all the hotels. Intacct, again, is a multi-entity environment. So I'm at the top level, looking down and looking at all of these entities. So you can pull all of your entities together at the top level, or you could segment it out and look at each one of these entities as well. You get to choose what level of buckets you are on, right? You get to choose which ones you're dumping out, where they're going and how they're going out of those different kinds of buckets. And that's kind of the power of dimensional accounting. One more thing I'm going to show you, pop over here to my report center. And you'll notice that when we get here, there will be a bunch of profit and loss statements, not just one, we get a bunch, and that's because of the dimensional accounting. Sometimes that can be a little bit slow, but you'll notice that we have P&L by department, location, class, customer, employee, item, project, all sorts of different profit and losses. And that's because of dimensional accounting. So if I wanted to look at a profit and loss statement by project, these are the projects in this environment. So we got server upgrade, internal audit, no project. So you can align those different projects because of the dimensions. It's tagged on every transaction line, and then it will put them in a column for you and then sum it up at the end. And you can get these to look however you need to look at them. I've never seen another software do that natively. You have to work for that in other softwares. You know, you have to dump out that big bucket, separate it, and then redesign how your reports look. This just doesn't natively. I didn't do anything special to get this report, and that's the power of dimensional accounting. Okay,
Or
I
I
will.
have to launch the final poll question. We're at the top of the hour, and the question is, you've heard a lot about Sage Intacct and LBMC Technology Solutions, and what we'd like to offer is a lunch and learn, but this time all about you, where given what you've seen today, to tell us what your challenges are, what your aspirations are as a company, and we can kind of see if there's a good fit between the two of us, between the solution, between the partner, and between your organization. So what we do is we bring our construction experts. You can bring your team together. We will cater the lunch. And even if the meeting is virtual, we can make sure that something is delivered to your office. And it's a chance for us to talk about what your journey to the cloud might look like. So I will end this poll, and Misty, you can finish this out.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us today. You know, we do definitely want to talk to you, so feel free to take us up on lunch. And here's our contact information. Eddie Finley is our sales director, and again, I'm the Sage Intacct CRE practice lead. I'd be happy to talk to you. It doesn't cost anything to talk to us, so feel free to reach out to us and book an appointment. And I look forward to working and hearing from all of you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great. Misty, thank you so much for your presentation today. Thank you to our audience for taking some time out of your day, and we hope to see you at a future LBMC Tech webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.